like you have a car with frame damage from the factory. That's Giga Press 2.0. And they want you to think this is an innovation of great leap in technology. Insurance rates are going to go up. It's training us to accept that we don't get things that are fixable. Is Giga Press a Giga Chad or is it Giga Dud? This is Rip Roaring Garage. I'm Alex. And what is a Giga Press? What is Giga Casting? We're going to dive into the controversy, this new technique in automotive manufacturing, and how it's going to affect you. However, before that, quick little message. Happy Halloween. This is foreshadowing for next episode. Crunch. What the? Many of you may have heard of Giga Press or Giga Casting. In fact, that's probably why all the new guys are clicking on this video. So what I'm going to try to do is be as objective as possible, and only at the end will I impart my own opinions, right? However, getting information at this early of a stage is very difficult because, let's face it, most of the articles, videos are from Tesla fanboys. And we're going to have to dig through and cut through that and see how it's going to affect you. Because as I said, this is a process that GM is investing in, Toyota, VW. So these are, basically the three largest manufacturers in the world right now. What is Giga Casting? Well, like the name says, it's casting, metal casting at a larger scale. Not at the giga scale, let's be real. That's marketing lingo. And that is our first clue, our first indication that something's off. There's a catch, because we have many different technological processes in fabrication, in metallurgy, and all that don't have a cool giga name. Why does this one have it? Because there's a catch. The marketeers are running out and putting this cool little label on it just to get that positive initial review, like a channel like this. Timio Tesla.
Tesla is in the midst of developing a new $25,000 electric car, which aims to be half the cost of the previous generation vehicles, including the Model 3 and Model Y.
Obviously, every manufacturer wants to lower costs and make their vehicles more affordable.
Elon Musk revealed his plans to produce tens of millions of these cars.
Okay, tens of millions of cars. We're getting into the fluffery now.
Earlier this year, starting with a revolutionary new method that highly parallelizes the manufacturing process. Tesla calls this the Unboxed Process, which involves developing large sub-assemblies, giving them the advantage of allowing multiple workers and robots to focus on these relatively smaller parts at the same time.
So the problem with this is actually going a step back. When you're young, and most Tesla owners and fanboys are younger, they may not know this. The way vehicles were built was the vehicle was in place, people and teams would come around it and do their thing and assemble it little by little. They still do this on larger vehicles, trucks, tractor trailers, and buses. You still do that with ships, where they lay the keel.
This marks an innovative departure from the traditional assembly line.
How is that innovative? It's going back. It's literally showing me exactly how cars have been made for, 70 freaking years.
Which, by definition, follows a linear path and hasn't seen significant changes in literally over 100 years.
Really? Or, how about automation, robots? That drastically changed how cars were made. And this is the problem, like I said. You will get a channel like this that is enamored with the company. They're acting like a cheerleader, like unpaid advertisers.
Since it was popularized by Henry Ford. However, a recent report from Reuters reveals Tesla's under-the-radar pursuit of a groundbreaking next-gen technology, a Gigacasting 2.0, which is something slightly different from what they initially showcased to the public back in March of this year.
I don't know what's so spectacular, because it's showing exactly the same components you get on a modern car today. Side panels and subframe. And you got the rear tub and the front trunk. No, I'm never going to say that stupid freaking word.
Tesla has been making use of large gigacastings for the front and rear underbody of its Model 3 and Y vehicles for some time.
So in other words, that's the 1.0 version. Actually, I didn't know that's the way they made them. And that worries me. It should worry anybody that has a Tesla. We're also dealing with the metal that Teslas are made from.
They use custom-designed Giga Presses ranging from 6,000 to 9,000 tons of force that are built by the company Idra and contain some extra requirements from Tesla.
Guy doesn't say what those requirements are. However, the Idra, this manufacturing company, it's a metallurgical company. They make these kinds of things for multiple manufacturers and not just in the automotive industry.
Giga Press is one of the largest we know of that's been acquired by Tesla and is set to be aimed at casting parts for the Cybertruck. Because this is a completely different type of vehicle that employs an exoskeleton design.
How is that completely different? That's just unibody. Unibody, you can say, is an exoskeleton car versus a framed vehicle that has, like a keel, like us, an internal structural structure.
Which places the structural elements on the exterior of the vehicle, as opposed to the internal chassis of a car.
So he even says it as a Fanboy channel. These are the guys that are out there getting out in front of any question somebody might have. Cheerleader, innovation tech, and buzzword after buzzword after buzzword.
For this novel pickup truck. This, in turn, has provided Tesla with valuable insights that they could potentially reapply back into their existing chassis-based vehicles like the Model 3 and Model Y.
What?
Those are not chassis-based vehicles. Words have an importance. They communicate things. Teslas are unibody. They're not chassis-based vehicles.
Tesla's approach is instead to leverage the learnings from the Cybertruck and create an entirely new, more efficient platform for the development of the upcoming $25,000 vehicle using the Unboxed process inspired by the innovations introduced with the Cybertruck. Tesla's plan is to use this ultra-large casting machine to form the entire underbody of their smaller $25,000 vehicle in one single piece. This appears to be possible in part because the Cybertruck castings are so large.
This is a whole bunch of fluff and nonsense.
Tesla does have a patent for a giant multi-directional casting machine.
Now this is actually interesting. Multi-directional casting, that is new.
Said to do the entire vehicle at once, demonstrating their desire to put more and more parts into a single casting.
Why? What's this obsession with fewer parts? It has fewer moving parts. We want to make the body with as few parts as possible. Something that has many different parts makes it very easy to fix. It also makes aligning things. If you have one defect, then that defect will propagate to the entire assembly if it's one chunk. But I'm going to get into that in a little bit. I will be looking over some other articles that are more objective than this guy.
According to Reuters, this would allow the next generation vehicle to combine up to 400 parts into a single casting.
Again, this obsession with fewer and fewer parts. You need multiple parts. What are you going to do at one point? Just make a car with one porthole? That I don't know. These people are weird. I don't get them.
It's interesting to consider that Reuters has been quite accurate with its predictions thus far.
Right. Okay.
Now this could be massive for Tesla and would push them to further disrupt the traditional automakers, especially since their current gigacastings have automakers who haven't at all innovated in decades scrambling to catch up.
This is, again, we're getting into religious territory that, automakers that haven't innovated. That's why we have 1,000 horsepower cars you can just buy with the warranty. That's innovation, if you want to think about it in that sense.
Tesla's tremendous cost savings and additional speed due to the
That's the key. That is the key right there, the cost savings.
Giga Press's single part efficiency, eliminating swaths of factory robots, has made their electric vehicles highly competitive in the market.
They're so competitive that you only see them in California and New York, right?
While everyone else struggles just to break even.
Just pulling it out of their butts.
However, this new Gigacasting 2.0 deviates or even conflicts with the innovative Unboxed process, which would completely change how the vehicle is built.
That's an assembly line, buddy. Now, this is the interesting part. They have a cast manufacturing method that uses 3D printing with the medium being sand. You have something like this that basically will print out whatever the mold is supposed to be, and then you can use it in those presses. One of the cool things about the sand 3D printing mold is that you can create objects like this that are very intricate and complex. Now, looking at a couple of other sources, Automotive News Europe, Giga Press is the giant diecasts that are reshaping car manufacturing. As in the previous video we saw, the impetus is to reduce costs and increase efficiency, not the vehicle's efficiency. And that's the word game they play. They will use, oh, it's more efficient. No, it's not. It's the same car. You're just making it differently. It's more efficient for them. It costs them less. Granted, that may be a way to get a car cheaper. However, with inflation and all that, I don't see them hitting that 30K mark. Tesla has pioneered the use of massive casting machines, also known as Giga Presses, to make large single pieces of the vehicle. Now, here we go. Critics say the process poses quality and flexibility risks, as a single flaw can comprise a whole module and make fixing more difficult. But with the auto industry struggling to preserve profit margins and amid surging raw material prices, automakers including Toyota, General Motors, Hyundai, Volvo, and Chinese electric vehicle startup NIO are turning to companies such as Idra for help. We saw this innovation once before, probably many times, but one big time. And that was when we went from the conventional layout frame, engine in the front, drive wheels on the rear. The change occurred when they bundled everything into the drivetrain. The drivetrain assembly was the engine, transmission, and everything associated to get power to the wheels, all encompassed in the front, because it was easier to make that as one larger assembly and just drop it into this frame, the monocoque frame they called, right? The unibody. When you look at a car like the Crown Vic, you have the frame and the body coming in separately. So when they drop the body, the engine's already there, but it has to be done separately. On a unibody car, they will just add the entire drivetrain in one shot. Now, this doesn't occur with our Dodges because they're rear-wheel drive and they come up from underneath. And many cars will have their different processes. However, the big question still remains. What happens with defects? Because on a car like this, everything is done compartmentalized. So a defect will not propagate to the whole car. And worse, that defect could translate to a car that ends up on the dealership lot and nobody knows until much later. Inside EVs, so these guys have that ideological interest to push this as the greatest thing. A Giga Press is a high-pressure die casting machine that injects molten aluminum into casting molds. And that's another problem we have. So on top of the defects that could occur, you have aluminum versus steel. Most cars are made out of steel, their body panels, their structural components and whatnot. Aluminum has a couple of interesting properties. One of them is that it work hardens, but also the reason they use it is because it has a lower melting point. You can inject aluminum into a cast without bringing the temperature up to the melting point of, let's say, steel. I want you to look at the way the liquid inside is an unopened can, how it creates these ribs. The metal will find its most energetically happy place. Incidentally, why barrels and other pressure chambers may have ribs on the outside. Well, they say 9,000 tons of force. What is that in pressure? 55 to 61 thousand kilonewtons, 5,600, 9,200 tons of force. But force on its own is meaningless. I need a surface area. What does this force apply to? If you think about it from how it's made, an engineering standpoint, you don't need that much pressure when you're casting it. You only need as much pressure to eliminate any air bubbles and pockets in the cast. Light metal age. The impact of gigacasting on car manufacturing and aluminum content. And they actually get into the alloys used, so the AS380 and 319 alloys. They're talking about casting being the historically used for the engine blocks and other larger assemblies that are made out of iron. Steel, but we colloquially call it as cast iron. Now, aluminum has been usually done in extrusion. You get it warm enough and you run it through something that shapes it, and it comes out as a sheet or a profile, like literally one of the ads. Yeah, like something like that. Remember all the little toys, die-cast metal. It wasn't plastic. It had some heft to it. It was, a nice product. The problem with these is that they're not exposed to the same impact forces that a car is. There's no concern of work hardening. So if you hit something They start getting harder. When a metal gets harder, it gets more brittle. Aluminum tends to crack. You'll see this in aviation, little rivet hole. It'll develop stress risers, cracks, and these things have led to many people dying. Now, the problem with cars is that they will also develop this. How do you fix it? You have to weld. There's no replacing a panel. You can't just cut out a chunk and then weld it in, because now you're messing with metallurgical properties. And every time you weld, you're introducing weird forces. It might look straight, but cut one end and all of a sudden it just flops up because it's under tension from that heat that you're putting localized into it. So repairing these cars, which is one of the concerns that only these guys seem to bring. Even in the benefits, they talk about, by comparison, sheet stampings can be made with thickness as low as 0.7 millimeters and can have higher strength than the casting. Yes, metal has a crystalline structure. Sometimes you see it as a square with the big carbon steel and all that stuck inside those squares, whatever. But bigger than that, there's granules. And these little chunks like to align in certain ways. And that's the reason why we have forging. Forging aligns these things in a nice, even pattern. The same happens with forged pistons. Everybody wants forged pistons. We have forged cylinder sleeves. And anything that requires a great deal of stress is going to be forged. Casting, gravity is the only force, maybe some pressure, that aligns those granules. And the worst of all is machining. Machining will get you a nice, pretty part, but again, it's cast, and then you're taking things in an unnatural way. They can't name a single benefit to you, the consumer. It's all about supply chain logistics, crash performance, possible. They're trying to come up with something, because otherwise they got nothing for the consumer. What does the consumer get out of this? Reduce costs for the manufacturer and supply chain benefits. Whoop they freaking do. Well, the big downside is repairability. And that's the big thing. The fact that you cannot repair these. It's already aluminum. We already talked about the Rivian, how you have the Unipanel. A dent right in the quarter will total out the vehicle. Now imagine if this part, right, is the whole car. We're not even talking about a $55,000 repair. We're talking about more than the vehicle, more than a brand new vehicle. The second downside is maintaining tight tolerances required during manufacturing. Casting is kind of rough. Gigacasting have different wall thicknesses throughout the part, each of which cool down differentially within the die during the cooling and subsequent quenching phase. The quenching process, it's all about heat and all about energy. That press, with all the energy going into it, it's going to convert this molten mess of aluminum, it's going to convert into a shape using energy. And the energy that has nowhere to go gets turned into heat. And now you got to cool it down. And aluminum is very tricky. Steel is much simpler, much lower energy required to stamp a piece of sheet metal. And on top of the fact that you had this cool down, you had the work hardening effect, you have the imperfections, add to that the repair problems. So they're talking about the limitations of aluminum and how you may require alloys that don't require heat treatment or may only need artificial aging without quenching. One of the problems Teslas have is body fitment. I didn't know that they were using Gigacasting 1.0. That explains the reason you have the fitment issues. Tolerances are all off. As you cast it, the moment you cast it, it's perfect. It's exactly the way the mold is. But as it cools, one side cools quicker, the other side slower, starts warping and shifting, and all sorts of weird things happen. Now, you can press it down and bolt things on and whatever, but you're not going to have things line up. Like you have a car with frame damage from the factory. That's Giga Press 2.0. The bigger effect that we're all going to feel from this that worries me are insurance companies. Once you have a car like this, even 30 grand, if it gets totaled, and another one, or you get these $20,000 repairs for a tiny ding, for the kind of thing that everybody experiences, insurance rates are going to go up. For them to stay in money, they'll justify for us, for our dwindling profit margins, we need to raise costs. So you're going to start paying more, even if you don't have one of these stupid cars. Just because more and more manufacturers will start using this process, the insurance company is just going to say that if 90% of cars, or hell, if just 60% of cars are made with this Giga Casting, or the Giga Press, just have one algorithm calculate all these things, and that's it. If you're outside of that, then, well, sucks to be you, pay up. Normally, I don't care what Rivian does, or Tesla or whatever. Like I like what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter, but that doesn't mean squat with the cars. In fact, what I want to show other than this is some of the pot metal castings. These are die-cast metal cars. You see how it cracks and rips? Steel won't do that. Steel will bend and stretch rather than rip, tear, crack. Here's another one. Looks a little more expensive. But again, you see where that crease was that was in the mold. That leads to the stress riser, and it's going to crack there. Anytime you have a change in direction or change in shape, you will get a crack forming there with aluminum. There's a reason why we adopted steel, even though it corrodes so easily. And we go through all the lengths to paint them, to zinc plate and electroplating and all sorts of other things. Look at that beautiful car. If crash test ratings are your thing, you'll see old, ancient airplanes. That B-52 that's going to be 100 years old when it retires, it's not really the same plane. They've reskinned it. The spars, the ribs, everything gets replaced after a certain amount of cycles. All that creates this flexing. Those of you that are old enough might remember the Aloha Airlines incident. Stress fractures along the rivets cause the whole plane to just peel open like freaking, look at that. Cracks that go unnoticed. Now apply that to a freaking car. These things are going to become death traps before anybody realizes it, and they want you to think this is an innovation of great leap in technology. You want to talk innovation? Aluminum structures and aluminum skin on aircraft? We went to carbon fiber. That's tough material, but that costs money. While some people are interested in that, some people want the quality, the vast majority of people are just little sheep, and rather than buying the used car, no, they got to show off to their neighbors. Look at me with the new car with the most outlandish freaking giant grill and stupid headlights, because that's what catches your eye. I know I'm missing a lot of things. This is a massive topic. Hell, we might even have a couple of engineers to debate this further, because this is significant and it's looking like a lot of companies are going in this direction. I am not going to be into these kinds of cars. They're made to be single use, non-repairable. They will try to engineer them where the car will last only as long as your loan lasts. So if you have a 7-year loan, that car is going to last 7 years. And after that, it's just unfixable. It's such a cash grab. The amount of waste and junked cars we're going to see is going to be insane. It's training us to accept that we don't get things that are fixable. We have created a generation of idiots, and I'm looking at you millennials. This isn't a boomer thing or a zoomer thing. In fact, they're smarter than the damn millennials. You guys are the ones drooling. Oh, look to Tesla. And you'll see in the next episode, the insanity lithium-ion technology is insanely dangerous. It's only positive, and it's messed up to even think about this, but our economic state is dismal. People are not buying a lot of cars. These new technologies are hungry. They want sales to justify the R&D involved in manufacturing. And if we're not buying regular cars, they're not selling these. We still got the t-shirts. They're not Giga pressed, although you can press them at the dry cleaners, get that sharp military crease. It's up to us and just say no. I'd rather keep my old car because, A, it's cooler. Come on, a Challenger Charger is going to be a million times cooler than any of these new things. They got the style, they got the presence, and they're going to last longer. I can fix them, I can modify them, I can personalize it to make it my car. You can't do that with this, with locked CPUs. Fewer moving parts. That means fewer things you can actually do to it, including repair. We are strong and we are on the winning side of this because, well, we're nuts. Typically, us crazy guys, we hold our ground just because, don't wanna. We're the ones with the money, and if we say no, then it doesn't happen. That's why Dodge kept building, because we kept buying them. That's what we wanted. They didn't have to change it. That's a woman thing. Women like wearing the different outfits. I can't wear that. I wore that last night. Guys, don't give a rat's ass. Is it cool? Yeah. Then I want it. I don't give a rat's ass if it's the same since 2015. Even better. That means there's more parts, and they're going to last for decades. There's always going to be a Challenger somewhere in the junkyard. But see, that's the way we think versus their bean counters. That's why they're so out of touch. Because if Dodge was smart, they would just say, okay, we're going to do some of this EV stuff, but we're still going to make the Challenger. Maybe a little expensive, inflation, whatever, but we'll still make it because we know that people want it. So I'm Alex. This is Rip Roaring Garage, where oil is thicker than blood. Hit me a like, and I hope you have a rip roaring day. Is the Giga Press? It's a Giga Press. It's Giga Chat. Giggity. Aluminum and salt water don't like it. Well, no metal likes salt water. Salt water is like the worst thing you can have for a metal. It is an angry fluid. Forget about fire. Forget about lithium. Salt water is the angriest, most PMSing substance on this planet. It doesn't like anything, and it doesn't like anything staying the way it was.